While the moves on his coaching staff were forced upon him, BYU football coach Kalani Sitake has responded emphatically with some very savvy moves that indicate that he is going all in 2026.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, 14-year credentialed media member at BYU, your resident expert and insiders, your host here on the show. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And thank you for making all of us fine folks over at Locked On, the #1 sports podcast network. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about BYU finalizing, their coaching staff. Moves on the defensive side of the football that indicate to me that Kalani Sitake, he's addressing some pretty important positions of weakness and strength in the hopes they can get BYU that much closer to achieving their dreams, Big 12 title, college football playoff, etc. Then we'll talk some BYU basketball. I have been thinking about a lineup change, and it's one particular move in the starting lineup I think could, calm some of the anxiety around BYU basketball fans, at least psyche, when it comes to this team. And then we'll finish back up on the football front as we talk a little bit about BYU's best recruiting class in the modern era. And the evidence is there, courtesy of our friends over at 24/7 Sports. We'll get to all that ahead on today's show, and it's all brought to you this episode by our friends over at Mazda. They put that same drive into every single detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward segment. There's more to a Mazda because, as always, there's more to you. All right, if you missed the news yesterday, Kalani Sitake has finalized his coaching staff for the upcoming football season. There is one outside hire that was finalized yesterday, that being Lewis Walker coming in as BYU's cornerbacks coach. Now, let's get it out of the way real quick in terms of the staff assignments for those of you who missed it yesterday. So Lewis Walker comes in as the cornerbacks coach. They have moved Justin Ena from his linebackers role to a full-time special teams coordinator role, then elevated Chad Kauhaʻaha'a, who was the senior defensive analyst the past 2 years, to an outside linebackers coaching role. Inside linebackers will go with new BYU defensive coordinator Kelly Poppinga. Sione Puha will be BYU's defensive line coach. And then with Lewis Walker taking over cornerbacks, the previous guy slated to coach cornerbacks, and Demario Warren, who is also the passing game defensive coordinator, he will now shift to coaching BYU safeties. Got it? Is that clear as mud? Good. Now, the reason why I said in the open of today's show that I believe this indicates that Kalani Sitake plans on going for broke this fall is because look at what he's done. He has bolstered positions that absolutely need bolstering, but also has made sure that positions or parts of the game that BYU struggled in 2025 that precluded them from playing for a national championship in the college football playoff, didn't allow them to win a Big 12 title. He's making sure that all those bases are covered, as evidenced by, I think, making a full-time special teams coordinator hire with Justin Ena. Now, last year, Kelly Poppinga was BYU special teams coordinator. He's been that since he arrived in Provo, but he's always had split duties due to the fact he's also been BYU's defensive ends coach during his time up to this point. With him being elevated to the defensive coordinator role, that obviously opened up an opportunity for Justin Ena to move into that role on a full-time basis. I think having a coach there full-time, especially considering some of the weaknesses BYU special teams faced in 2025, that absolutely is, I think, a phase that Kalani Sitake of the game, he wants shored up, and he wants it to be as strong as possible. And the background with Justin Ena is that he has been a special teams coordinator, most notably during his stint at the University of Utah as an assistant coach. He, focusing on that full time, in theory, should benefit BYU in the third phase of the game. Chad Kauhaʻaha'a has been BYU's pass rush coach for the past 2 seasons in an analyst role. Now he moves into an outside linebackers role where he has more of a hands-on impact in terms of recruiting to that position, and it's well served to have him do that because he has produced BYU's most potent pass rush that Kalani Sitake has ever had in his tenure. He produced the most sacks this past season in 2025 than BYU had seen in a full decade, going all the way back to 2015. That's the final stanza of the Bronco Mendenhall era. It has been a hot minute since the pass rush has been as effective as it has been for BYU. And Kalani Sitake looked, I think, at Chad K, as most people know him, and said, yeah, we need to keep doing this. We need to have him in a more, I think, preeminent role in terms of recruiting, because as a full-time assistant, he can now go over to the islands, speaking of Hawaii, out into the Pacific, recruit there, recruit the West Coast, which he's done effectively at multiple stops along his coaching career. And the gusto of recruiting that you lost with guys like Jay Hill and Gennaro Guilford moving over to Michigan, well, that's replaced in large part by what I believe that Chad Kauhaʻaha'a will bring in that role. Now, the other move is you bring in Lewis Walker here, and he's a little bit of an unknown. And I'll be honest, I had no idea that he was going to be the guy for BYU's cornerbacks job. But if you look at his background, he grew up in the state of Utah, played at Judge Memorial High School. As far as I am aware, he is not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but having played at Judge Memorial, as well as having spent his final 2 years of his college career playing for Kalani Sitake at the University of Utah, he knows the lay of the land at BYU and what it means to coach in this state, because he grew up in this state. He gets the dynamic of it all. And while he may be a Utah grad, he obviously understands what this state can produce talent-wise. And his role as a cornerbacks coach is to go out there and recruit. Here's the deal. I think I've schooled some of you to the game on this in the past, but if I have not, let me be very blunt. Position coaches that don't carry a coordinator title, more often than not, your number one job, more than coaching up your players, and it's still important to coach up your players, but your job, speaking of a guy like Lewis Walker, like a Harvey Unga on offense, etc., is that your job is to be an ace recruiter for BYU staff. Chad Kauhaʻaha'a will do a great job as an outside linebackers coach because he can focus on recruiting and obviously coaching up his guys. Should be the same thing for Lewis Walker. He does not have to worry about coordinating defense. He doesn't have to worry about making sure that the passing game is synced up. That's what a guy like Demario Warren will do. And I think those coaches with more seniority, I should say, they're more capable of balancing the responsibilities of being coordinators, being position coaches, and also recruiting on the side. So Lewis Walker, yeah, he's going to come in, and he's got two ready-made starters in Trey Stewart as well as Evan Johnson. But his priority, at least starting out his run at BYU, is to become the best recruiter he can be and make sure that that position group, speaking of cornerbacks, as well as others on defense that he may find along the way, he brings the best and brightest and the most talented players he possibly can to Brigham Young University. All of these moves indicate to me that Kalani Sitake has made sure that phases of the game or positions where he saw weakness or something that may have affected BYU's chances of really living their dreams that they've been chasing for the better part of 2 seasons now. They want to win a Big 12 title. They want to play in the college football playoff. I think he has seen some of those glaring needs in terms of holes in his lineup, and he's gone about hiring these coaches to fill those gaps. And obviously the players that they're being coached, that they're coaching, speaking of those assistant coaches, will have to ultimately make the plays on the field. But I think he's done a phenomenal job answering every question we had about what his staff was going to look like in the aftermath of Jay Hill and Gennaro Guilford's departure. Keeping the players, masterstroke on Kalani Sitake's part, but now bolstering it with very, very strong retainment of coaches in the program beyond those two, as well as elevating guys in critical positions that should see them succeed. Yeah, I think BYU's going really all in on 2026, and they're absolutely intent on getting over the hump, winning a Big 12 title, finally breaking through and playing the college football playoff. And these are moves that absolutely show that Kalani Sitake is all in here. All right, coming up next, we'll talk about a position change, I think, in BYU starting lineup that could both benefit the BYU Cougars on the court, but also, calm some of the fears of Cougar Nation. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. This is moving the game forward segment for those who show there's just more to the score than what's on the screen. I want to highlight this week Richie Saunders. What a phenomenal performance against Kansas. 33 points, 24 of them in the second half, and really popped when it came to the NBA draft cycle because he showed what he's capable of against top-tier talent. These are the moments that remind us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit attitude, all those things things I think Richie Saunders embodies as much as any person could embody them. Of course, our friends over at Mazda, they put that same passion to every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. As of course, there's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Today's show is also brought to you by our local friends over at Woodward Park City. We're just going to say it. The fun per foot ratio at Woodward Park City is second to none, everybody. Located just 20 minutes from the Salt Lake Valley, Woodward's offers experiential learning in a radically fun and safe environment with facilities for all abilities. The door is always open to first-timers and regulars alike. And the best part is they have their brand new Winter Mountain Park season pass. Ride all season long at one of the Wasatch's best terrain parks and get the absolute best value out of your winter. It's the best place to maximize your mountain time. Easy in, easy out, meaning no pay to park. No shuttle to the mountain. Just show up and you can ride. Of course, they have all access memberships. Their flagship pass product, which features unlimited year-round fun, indoors and out. Get everything that Woodward Park City can throw at you. Ride, jump, ski, and play across every season with their unlimited access, indoor and mountain access, plus monthly perks, buddy tickets, and exclusive member benefits. It's all courtesy of our friends over at Woodward Park City. If you're just starting out, you can learn to fly with the Woodward Tribe in a seasonal or multi-week program to make sure, feeling pretty good on the slopes. Just once again, 20 minutes from Salt Lake Valley, Woodward is off the experiential learning with facilities for all abilities. Learn more now at woodwardparkcity.com. Thank you once again for being here on Locked On Cougars, and thank you for making all of us over at Locked On, America's #1 sports podcast network. Please continue to subscribe, rate and review, and share this with your family and friends. It's a great product, I believe, from my heart of hearts, and that's obviously self-aggrandizement, speaking of myself in the third person, but I love what I do here on the show. I hope you guys understand the passion I put into it and what we bring to the table every single day. All right, let's talk about BYU basketball. Now, here's the deal. BYU is trying to bounce back. They'll be facing off against Oklahoma State tomorrow night in Stillwater at Gallagher-Iba Arena, and then they return Saturday night to the Marriott Center to face off against Houston. It is a big week for the Cougars. They sunk from 13 to 16 in the national polls, actually dropped less than I anticipated them dropping, and I know that losing to ranked opponents is not supposed to hurt you that much, but still, I still expected BYU to drop more than they did. So that's actually a mark of respect, I think, for what BYU has on their roster. But there is a position change that I know a number of you have advocated for, at least in part, and I'm starting to kind of see what might be sneaky brilliant about it. Now, let's be very blunt. Kevin Young is never going to take my advice. Now, maybe he does, and maybe he's already thought about this, but I believe that BYU would be best served by making a change to their starting lineup and replacing Kennard Davis Jr. with Hadim Boop, but not for the reasons you might imagine. Here's my reasoning for this. Hadim Boop, I think, is BYU's best on-ball defender and has the versatility to guard 4 different positions. Speaking of essentially 1 through 4, he has that positional versatility on the wing to guard players of any size. He's got the length, the athleticism, all that. That's not saying that Kennard Davis doesn't have that. He's actually been very capable in that role. But I think we all, and I include myself in this, have wondered where BYU's bench scoring is going to come from. Well, maybe if you move Hadim Boop into the starting lineup and bring Kennard Davis Jr. off of the bench, he could get back to being what he was at Southern Illinois before he joined BYU, and that is an all-conference performer who scored in bunches for SIU. This is, I think, a move that could, answer some of the questions BYU has about where you're going to find shots for a guy like Moo in the starting lineup when he's playing alongside the so-called big three, Richie Saunders, AJ DeBonsa, and Rob Wright. Those three suck up a lot of the oxygen in the room, and the little that's left over kind of goes to Keba Keita when he's able to create right there at the rim in terms of putbacks and the like. And then there's just kind of this extra little bit that's been kind of shoved over to Moo Davis. It's not that he hasn't been demanding opportunities. It's not that he hasn't been effective in his role at points, but it's been too far and too small between. I think I got that right in terms of his role being what I think we all envisioned it being. So that's why I would at least consider moving Hadim Boop into the starting lineup and then bringing Moo in as that 6th man. In theory, Moo, who's a 6'6" walking mismatch for smaller sized guards or maybe slower forwards, if he's going up against second team guys in the Big 12, I think he could absolutely feast offensively against these teams. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a struggle for him because he's got to prove he could do it if this were to come to fruition. But I'm telling you, some of the struggles I believe that he has faced are trying to kind of balance his role, because remember, he was a primary scorer at his last stop. He was an all-conference performer, and now he's being asked to play what, fourth, maybe fifth fiddle in this lineup for BYU. Could he become this year's version of Fousseyni Traore? Now, Fous was just an out-and-out scorer. Fous had an ability to put the ball in the bucket, and I was floored time and time again every time he would back a guy down and that feathery soft touch and find a way to put the ball in the basket. I'm not saying that Kennard Davis Jr. is going to do that exact same way, because that's not really his game, but I think as a second-team player coming off of the bench, he could be very effective in that role, could bring an extra scoring punch to BYU's lineup that has been sorely needed from this second unit. I look back to that Kansas game in particular. Hadim Boob's late three was the only, were the only bench points scored by BYU in that game. They scored 82 points. 79 of them came from the starting lineup. That's a heavy load the BYU starting lineup is carrying. And considering the struggles that Moo has had shooting the ball in particular, I think this could be a move that could unlock him offensively. Once again, this is not me telling Kevin Young you have to do this, because Kevin Young knows more basketball, has probably forgotten more basketball than I will ever know, to be very blunt. But I think it could be a move that could, I think, answer a lot of the questions that this BYU lineup has been lacking. And like I said, a second unit go-to scorer, a guy who can come in and kind of lead that second unit and be that alpha when that second unit's out on the court. And I don't know. I just look at it, and I think BYU needs to try something different than what they have tried. Moo has been a starter outside of the fact of the short stint he served as a suspension for that DUI, the arrest for suspicion of DUI. I'd be very blunt about, clear about what's happening there. And obviously that court case is still pending. And I think he also missed a game or two also injury-wise. But outside of that, he's been BYU starting four-man. I don't think he would take very lightly to being taken out of the lineup. But at the same time, as I mentioned, what do you have to lose here for BYU? Try something new, see if it works. And maybe, once again, if he thrives in that six-man role, BYU found a new facet and kind of unlocked a new, a level up in terms of what they're trying to do as they try and get over the top and pick up a signature win, really kind of bolster their NCAA tournament resume, because it's getting down to brass tacks time. And you got to answer the bell. And at some point, BYU is going to have to get over the hump. They can't continue to dig first half holes and try and fight their way out of it in the second half. You got to play a consistent 40 minutes. And this could be a move to stabilize that lineup and maybe offer, some more stability across the rotation to help BYU, be a little more effective, hopefully, in the opening stanzas of these games they're playing. All right, we'll finish up today's show. Coming up next, we'll talk some BYU football. Now, they have put together their best recruiting class in the modern recruiting era. Now, that includes the late 1990s all the way through the modern day in 2026. And 24/7 Sports backs it up with, count them, 7 players in their top 24/7 that BYU has added this last recruiting class. First, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Indeed. Hiring is not just about finding someone who will take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who would actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed-sponsored jobs is the move to make, because instead of hoping for the right person that stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, skills, certifications, even location. The best part is, if you're hiring, you want just somebody who can just help. You want someone with real experience who can jump right in and further your business and make sure it's exactly what you're looking for. It saves you time because you're spending less energy sorting through all the different mismatches and trying to weed out, okay, that person fits, this person doesn't. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I have been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes, and do it with our friends over at Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you once again for being here on Locked On Cougars and making it a part of your day. In fact, your first listen of the day, as we often like to say. If you are wanting to take the next step with what we're doing on Locked On, make sure you're in the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. Get insider perks like ad-free audio episodes, access to our members-only Discord server. If you want access to our Locked On merch store, where that's like I'm wearing, if you're watching this on YouTube, it's all available to you by going to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. Get the all access tier and get access to everything we have to offer you guys. And hopefully many more of you will be joining us here on the Everydayer Club in short order. All right. So the BYU football program is going to finalize their signing class for 2026 tomorrow. What? Hold on. What? National Signing Day? Yeah, it used to be a really, really big day. The first Wednesday in February used to be one of the you talk about like milestone moments in the offseason leading up to the college football season, and signing day was one of them. Well, with the advent of the early signing window, that's become the de facto actual National Signing Day that happens in early December. And mid-December, I should say. And now the actual National Signing Day has been relegated to secondary status, but it does not mean that BYU is standing idly by. In fact, they have put together their best recruiting class in modern recruiting history. And it just shows that when you do what BYU has done, A, play at the Power 4 level, and B, more importantly, win at a high clip, I should say, at that level, players want to come play for you. What a marvelous concept. I'm being facetious with that, but the point remains that BYU has put together their best recruiting class, I think, quite possibly ever. And the thought is that this recruiting class could be the one that takes them to the next level, really, truly competing for national championships and the like. Obviously, one recruiting class is not going to get that done. You need to continue to recruit at a very, very high level, but so long as Kalani Sitake and the Cougars keep winning the way that they have been over the past 2 years, 23-4, yeah, a lot of high-level prospects are going to be saying, hey, what's this about BYU and why should I not consider going there? Obviously, BYU has prided itself on being a developmental program. It likes to bring in the vast majority of its guys via the high school ranks. A majority of those will go on missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and return 1 to 2 years later. And then obviously you're building them up with the hope that 3 or 4 years down the line, they become the next group of studs that can elevate this BYU football program. In this most recent recruiting class, yeah, they've got guys on mission, some guys coming in right away, but every single one of them has the capability of making BYU as good as I think they could possibly want to be. And 7 of these players have made the final top 24/7 list. It's their final 2026 top 24/7. So essentially it's the top players across the country in the 2026 class. And BYU has 7 of them in these rankings, headlined obviously by Ryder Lyons, who's been on the cusp of 5-star status. He's currently 4 stars with 24/7 Sports. He's number 65 in these rankings. Then the big surprise, just soaring up the recruiting rankings, Adam Bywater from Olympus High School. Now, that last name should sound familiar. Ben Bywater was nowhere near the a 4-star prospect that his younger brother Adam is, but Ben was an absolute stud for the BYU football program before that shoulder injury ultimately ended his career prematurely. But Adam Bywater went from a pretty lightly thought of 3-star prospect and is now rated a solid 94. He's the number 2 prospect in the state of Utah, and it just rocketed up these recruiting charts to being the number 9 linebacker in the entire country. If Adam is anything, I mean anything like his older brother Ben, you're going to have an absolute stud there. Then checking in just right behind him, Bot Mulatalo. What a recruiting flip it was for BYU when they flipped Mulatalo from Oregon. Obviously, he was slated to play defensive line at Oregon, wanted to play offensive line, has proven to take to that like a duck takes to water, and Bot Mulatalo strengthened his class. Brock Harris. I need to remind you guys, if you're not an everydayer, I've told you the story before. Going back to Brock Harris, who is ranked the 142nd player in this class, back during his right before his junior year, he was at BYU summer camp, and a person that was on the BYU team at that time told me in no uncertain terms, Jake, if Brock Harris were to suit up today for the BYU football program, he would be our starting tight end. That was before his junior year of high school, everybody. He's become even better, even more dangerous, and that much more polished in that time since then. And Brock, going on a mission out of high school, is expected to return and really make BYU's tight end unit very, very strong, along with his compatriot in these rankings, Ty Getchie out of Eaglewood, Colorado, Cherry Creek High School, which is an absolute powerhouse on the front side of the Rocky Mountains. Ty is rated 92. And then I think maybe my favorite player of these 7 players ranked in this top 24/7 is Lopeti Moala. Lopeti Moala is 6'4", 260-ish pounds, and was a one-man wrecking crew for the Orem Tigers as a defensive lineman. He's just as capable holding up against the run as he is rushing the passer, and he looks every bit the part of the next star defensive end, or maybe moving inside to like a 3-technique defensive tackle for BYU's defense. Lopeti plans on going on a mission right out of high school, but I'm telling you, when he returns, remember his name, because what he showed at Orem High School has got me really, really excited to see what he's capable of moving forward. And the final player on this list was BYU, one of their latest additions to this recruiting class, that being Jaron Pula, him and his brother Kenan, obviously the twins from Lone Peak High School. Jaron is rated a 91 4-star prospect by 24/7 Sports, and he is a guy that is thought to be maybe day one rotation material for BYU at wide receiver. He's already enrolled in school in Provo, and if he is up to learning the playbook and bringing it on the field every single play like Fesi Sitake, the wide receivers coach, demands, there's a reason to think that Jaron Pula can't play early and often in his BYU career. And at 6'3", almost 185 pounds, I'm telling you, he's already got the frame and the size to be an impact player as a true freshman at BYU. And these 7 guys are kind of just the cream of the crop. There's a lot of the high 3-star prospects. I think of Legend Glasgow. I think of Jax Tanner. BYU did an incredible job capitalizing on what was a bumper crop of local and obviously LDS church affiliated talent in the 2026 recruiting cycle. These players, the hope is that in time, once again, that they are the guys that elevate BYU to where I think all of us want them to be, and that is truly being national title contenders. It's going to take time. It's going to take development. It's going to take these players really honing their craft and working on their own to become the best players they possibly can be. But should they achieve that, I'm telling you, BYU has never had this much talent on paper coming into this program. I know there are some out there that will tell you the 1980s BYU had that going, but it's a different era of football. BYU is absolutely rolling right now. They're playing at the highest level of football they've ever played at. Speaking of being members in the Big 12 Conference, very proud members at that, winning at a high level, both on the field and in this case, off the field in recruiting. And fingers crossed that the good times keep on rolling here for BYU, because Kalani Sitake, he's got that snowball really starting to kind of run downhill. And as it continues to pick up steam and obviously continue to scoop up talent, to use the expression, it's only going to make BYU that much deeper, that much more talented, and obviously that much better and that much more capable of winning, hopefully, a national championship. All right, that is going to do it for today's edition of the show. As always, appreciate all of you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Tomorrow, it is National Signing Day. Get some final thoughts ahead of BYU finalizing the 2026 recruiting cycle, transfer portal class, return missionaries. All that will be revealed tomorrow. And then we can finally, I feel like, really launch into our position group review/previews ahead of spring ball. We'll spend the rest of the month getting to those. But as always, make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Cougars to get all the latest episodes. And then also, if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Cougars ad-free, plus members-only Discord server access and more. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com to join the club today. For those of you on video, we're now going to send you to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel to get the latest across the network, or on audio. Make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and come back tomorrow and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.